Right, so I'm here on my peg now, peg 100 on Lake 7. This is where I qualified for the Golden Reel final. So I'm here today to run you through how I qualified for that final. I'm going to show you what methods are used and what were the best on the day. So going on to the morning of the draw, everyone was obviously here at the Glebe, anybody knows it. It's a venue where like a lot of MPEGs, everyone wants, you know what the flyers are, like all the MPEGs. But I drew 100, which is two out of the corner, because 98's the end, but 99 wasn't in. So I still had a thought to myself, like maybe I've still got a bit of room. So obviously it's near an MPEG as well. 98 isn't always that great, but the wind was going down the other end, which it was flat calm up here. But I still thought there was odd fish milling about here on the day, and I honestly thought I was going to catch a few. It looked really nice. So going on to my match, I always think on these big finals that you've got to keep it simple. You can't win on loads of different methods. So my attack for the day was to fish hard pellet short, a feeder line, and then a shallow line with casters. So going on to the match, I started the match short on hard pellets, just 6mm copping pellets. Those always seem best. The tackle I used on my short line was black hydro for a long kit. It's obviously really strong elastic for these big carp. Obviously it's real soft as well, so you're not like, it's not going to be real pingy and like only come out of 2 foot. It's real stretchy, which is spot on for these carp. Moving on to my rig, I used a 4x16 carper float diamond, which is perfectly strong and stable for these carp. And I fished it with a bulk of number 8s and a number 9 dropper. And then my line was 020 to 018 hook length to a Kaiser Nide hook. Moving on to the feeding, for when I was feeding it, I had just a little pot on with for feeding hard pellets. I'd put 6 pellets into the pot and then just ship out to where your marker is. Like I had a tree on the far side, just ship out, just rattle your pellets out a little bit higher than the water, make a little bit of noise, and then just flick your rig out into an arc so it falls back into your pellets where you've just tapped them in, and then just lower your float in nice and gently and wait for a bite. So as soon as I've hooked one, just literally 3 or 4 pellets out my hand, exactly where you've been fishing. Accuracy is key when you're chucking pellets. You don't want to be chucking here, there and everywhere. Do you know what I mean? You need to be accurate on a dinner plate every single time. 3 or 4 pellets, so that's priming your swim. So when you go back in, there's going to be a carp hopefully waiting there for you. As soon as you go back in, you're going to get a bite straight away and you're going to repeat the process. Still feed your 6 or 8 pellets in your pot though. Don't go chucking in loads of pellets and before you know it, your peg's gone balmy and you're foul hooking everything. That's no good. You want to be fishing for one bite, because these carp in here, they're massive. So you don't want to be foul hooking them or anything like that, because they're just going to trash you, or you're just going to start losing rigs and then you're wasting time out the water putting new hook lengths on, new rigs. So just keep it nice and simple. 3 or 4 pellets out your hand as soon as you hook a fish, 6 pellets in the pot, and you won't go wrong. I had 6 fish in the first hour, which they're quite big fish in this lake. This is probably the biggest stamp of carp are in this lake, and there's a lot of bream in here. So I had 6 carp in the first hour while I was feeding my shallow line, and then obviously I was going to chuck the feeder if the short line had died. So after an hour I had 7 carp, 6 or 7 carp for £53 I think after an hour, which is just a decent start. So I thought then I'd chuck the feeder and I hopefully get a good run on that. But it didn't actually work out like that. I chucked the feeder and I only caught 1 fish in an hour. Like the next hour it was really slow. But all the time I'd been feeding my casters at 14 metres, well 13 metres actually. And every now and then I kept seeing like it was fizzing really a lot, but obviously I didn't see any swirls or anything, so I thought maybe there's none there at the minute. And then after like sort of an hour and a half, I see a swirl. So I picked up my shallow rig, went out to where I'd been feeding casters, and my rig, I just fished a normal carper edge float, which obviously they're really nice, strong little dumpy floats, very short, perfect for fishing shallow, especially for carp because they're really strong. Line through the body, so obviously makes it a lot stronger. So now moving on to the line, I used 020 to an 018 hook length. I honestly thought I was going to catch carp, so I obviously want to be nice and robust. So I caught bream in the end, but it didn't make any difference. I kept thinking to myself, like, I might change it to 016 because it's a bit brutal for bream, but you never know, you might hook a 10-pound carp, and if you got 016 on in here, that's not going to be enough. Like, they just go shooting off to the far side and you can't stop them. Moving down to the hook, I used just a 14 Kaizen, and I used 3 dead maggots, and I always feed casters here, and I always fish either 3 or 4 dead maggots on the hook. I don't know why, it must be visual to the carp that they see them, because obviously they see a lot of casters, and then you're just flicking in some dead maggots. They're just flapping, like going through the water nice and slowly. They must just pick it out a lot better. I thought I was going to catch carp, but in the end I ended up flicking my rig in first chuck, and these swirls that I'd obviously been seeing was obviously bream. So I flicked it in and had a 5-pound bream first put in on 3 maggots. 3 dead maggots was the best bait. Caught anywhere from 18-inch to 2 foot deep. So, and like the first 30 minutes of fishing shallow, I had like 45 pound of bream in like 30 minutes. I was like, this is unreal. I couldn't believe it. And then it started to slow up a little bit. So I ended up catching a couple more bream on that line, but it wasn't the best. Like, you could tell it was dying. So the last hour I had probably, I don't know, I think I had probably about 135 pound with like last half an hour, last 40 minutes to go. And I thought, I literally had nothing to lose, so I thought I'd drop in short again and see if I can get a run the last 40 minutes. But obviously I spoke to Sam, and he said that they hadn't really been catching short really well late, when usually that's the best line on here late on in the match. So I dropped in, I had 2 carp in the first like 15 minutes of being on it, and there was 15 minutes to go. I went 10 minutes without a bite, or went literally 15 minutes without a bite. There was like a minute to go towards the end, to the end of the match, and I rattled some pellets out, chucked a few on top of my float, and straight away, literally, I had an indication that it shot under, and I played a fish on time on the whistle, and it was 12 pound, and unlucky to Kieran Rich, but he had 158 pound and I had 166 pound, so it was so close. And if I hadn't got that fish out on the end there, he'd have beat me. So it just proves how close these big qualifiers are. Like, every single fish counts. Just take your time. You never know, like that fish, if I'd have pulled like really hard trying to get back in for another one, I could have lost it, and then that could have been crucial. That could have cost me getting into the final. So come to the end of the match, I weighed 166 pound, which was 65 pound of bream and 100 pound of carp. So that decision that I made in the middle of the match to fish for them bream with casters has paid off, because otherwise if I'd have just fished for carp all day, I would have had 100 pound. So it just proves that it's worth swapping and changing and putting fish in the net, especially in these big qualifiers. So that's me qualified for the Golden Reel final, 3 years running now. Hopefully this year's my year, and hopefully I'll get a peg with a chance of winning the 50k.